Appreciate your time, Dad.
Many, many thanks, Pete. You look after you and, believe in Peter.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Okay. Bye-bye, Pete.
Hey, Dad. Welcome to the podcast.
Afternoon, Pete. Many thanks for the invitation. I'm no idea how this will go. This is my first one of these, so and many thanks for the training.
That's all right. We definitely have got there, and I guess the whole reason behind this podcast is to discuss the new RB values that we've put together.
Yep.
And I guess I want to start with just setting that up, and then we'll come back to it. So the reason why we created the RB values when people join Rugby Bricks, or how we interact with community. So I think my inspiration came from Matthew McConaughey. He said this line. He said, "Values have always been cool. There's ones that we can all agree on. They worked back then, they work now, and they will not go out of style or fashion." So that was the idea behind it. And we'll get to that later in the podcast. Some of our kickers that have got kicking tees actually will have been, the kicking tee would have come from Leo, come from Dad, because him and Mum helped me with the packing. How did you enjoy that process?
I think it was just like helping the boys with anything. It was it was wonderful to watch the orders grow. I remember one night I got a list from Australia of like 46 teas, and holy hell, this was the days where each one was hand packaged by Mum and Dad, and we had a big stack of teas on the table at the end of it with all the labels on, all ready to go, and it was wonderful, like, to watch it grow. I guess I never imagined that it would have ended up where it's ended up now, with you and 100,000 plus followers, like on Instagram. And you mentioned a recent order that went to over South Africa, and well done, Pete. It's like everything that is like that, they all have to begin somewhere. Walmart is a like a household name, but once upon a time it was Mr. Walton.
Yeah,
and
you
have to keep remembering that.
You're actually right. I still remember the day where I was talking to you about Rugby Bricks, and you said, one day you will have a tea. Just keep doing what you're doing and keeping your head down. So I do appreciate the fulfillment you and Mum did. It was a big
right.
It was a massive.
Thank you.
And also the podcast. Podcasts weren't a thing when you were growing up. When you were my age, how are you enjoying listening to podcasts?
I love them. I actually made a note to make some comments on that at the end. I guess that's where we started. When you were young, there were no podcasts, and there were no internet, basically, when you were born. And that Google, like, that came well after you. So that's why we did things like listen to Anthony Robbins and those kind of guys. I guess I used to reflect on what I learned at school and how little help it was in life when you started learning from those sort of guys like Anthony Robbins and others like him. There was no Mark Zuckerberg, there was no Bill Gates, there was no Gary Vee, but there was Anthony Robbins, and I found him and other online helpers, and
I definitely remember just on Anthony Robbins. I definitely remember all the cassette tapes, and when you think about it now, the cost of and just the setup of that information back then compared to how easy it is now. But why did you find value in exposing us at that age to inspirational people like Tony Robbins and life coaches and the rest of it? Why was that crucial?
It was crucial for me because I wasn't aware of it, and I was probably amazed when I read a book called Think and Grow Rich, and I believe that I did buy each of you boys a copy. That was probably the first book ever written about how the mind works, and a lot of that is about Dale, what was the name of the Carnegie, who was a steel magnate in the US. And once I learned that you could learn about these people, then I needed my boys to learn this kind of thing too, about how the mind worked, how you could set goals. Because all these concepts are relatively new. They believe that Think and Grow Rich was the first book ever written about how the mind works. That was meant for members of the public. No doubt there was neuroscientists that had read books and, written books. But yes, I just, to me, the Think and Grow Rich was nothing about Think and Grow Rich. It was all about how the mind worked. And I thought that my boys, including you, could learn about that. That would help you throughout the rest of your lives. And I guess even earlier than that, I always imagined that I would really like to be a dad. And then, as you know, we had a boy called Sam, and a little over 1 year later, we had you and Robbie. So I was, on the top of the world. I was the happiest dad on the planet, and I just decided that I was going to be the best dad that I could be, and anything I could do to help, I did.
Yeah.
And I guess that comes out of that value thing. It's I think values are ultra important in life, and they, as well as being important, they highlight what is important to us.
Yeah.
And in saying that, because of what's happened in the last week, I often wonder what Donald Trump's values are, but we won't spend too much time talking about that, hopefully.
100%. I also remember you often would say that the student has to be ready to be taught. And I think back to myself, I wasn't that keen on the Anthony Robbins stuff in the car and driving, but it's funny now, 3 years later, some of the best, one of my favourite videos is Anthony Robbins talking about rapport that I often get into. The other thing too, why did you make us take speech classes?
That's a long answer.
Well,
one of the things I learned probably many years ago, probably about the time you were born, no one is born with self-confidence. And I think it's hugely important that we all, of course, remember that. So I always imagined that it was a dad's number one job to give his boys confidence, or to help them improve their self-confidence, because the rest of the world was going to knock it out of them, and anything that a dad could do to build it, he should do. So I believe that being able to speak in public was one of those things that was a gift that only required a little bit of practice. So by going to speech classes, you learned how to do that, and hopefully that would have added to your own self-confidence. And I have to say it did.
Yes, you're right. Was there other stuff you made us do that maybe we didn't know you were doing?
Yes, I think you experience new things. I believe that once you guys went to school and had a routine, it ended, of course, but I believe that every weekend until you and Robbie were turned 5, you did a new adventure that you had never done before. And whether that was riding in a helicopter or riding in a bulldozer or whatever it was, you had an experience that you'd never had before. And you don't need to be a mathematician, that if we started that when you were 18 months or two, that 50 weekends in a row, you experienced a new adventure. And I believe that I'll always be really grateful that I had that idea. No one gave it to me. It was something I made up myself.
Yeah.
And of course, as you can imagine, once I was into it for a year, there was no turning back. And while there probably were times it got harder to think of the next thing, I had all week to think about it and plan it and make it happen. So yeah, those kind of things that probably happened without any of us knowing they were learning, growing and confidence building experiences. They were always uppermost in my mind, yes.
Do you think Oamaru was a good place to do that? I think about going up the clock tower and on the train tracks and beach and Kakanui, and good place to do it, out to the Hearsts.
Yeah, I don't know that there is a good place. I think we would have done it anywhere. We probably had more like opportunity in Oamaru because I had more contacts in Oamaru, but I don't know that we... there is a belief that growing up in a small town with rural background is good for us, and I probably believe that. Your experiences out at Ian and Gloria Hearst were obviously memorable for you, and they were all just part of the life that I was trying to build.
Yeah.
Even having like nights away from home when you're little, I always thought that was hugely important. If you weren't able to go away for a night with your brothers, there wasn't going to be much hope for you when you got older.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose more of those experiences that I can think back to kind of got into that work ethic and working hard. I've sort of got picking up pine cones. I don't know how many trailer loads and sacks we filled with pine cones, or painting fences or working bees. And that obviously, from my experience, is a huge part of who you are, is that work ethic and get the job done type mentality.
My dad was a farmer, so like growing up, all I knew was work. We had over 2 family holidays. One when I was 12 was a week in Oamaru, and one, was a week in Queenstown, and one when I was about over 17, we had a week in Oamaru. And
wow.
As you know, like Oamaru is only an hour's drive away from Oamaru, but I know that Dad came home twice, much to Mum's disgust, in that week because he was obviously worried about things on the farm and he wanted to have a look. And then he died, like it was a year later. He had a heart attack at 50 and died. So I guess while I knew that he probably overdid it, on the other hand, I knew that he got a lot done, and that's, when there was a job to do, the easiest way to get it done was get it and do it. And the pine cones, that was because we wanted to do the big overseas trip, and I thought it would be, you guys would enjoy it more if you knew that you'd made a bit of contribution to it. And as you know, in the year 2000, we went to the Gold Coast for 3 weeks, and then on the way home we went to the Olympics in Sydney. We never went into the Olympics, but the Olympics were there, the venues were there, and we had a good look around that. So yes, you did pick up over $700 worth of pine cones. I thought it was a remarkable achievement. It was $2 a bag. That's an awful lot of bags of pine cones.
Yeah.
And then you sold them. So yes, I was always of the view that we had to learn how to earn and learn how to do things.
Yeah.
One of the other things probably that I do recall is no member of our family had ever been to university. And so when you guys were you were 12, when Sam was going to high school, probably, we went to Dunedin and had a look around the Otago University. And it was the first time that I'd ever been to a university. And you guys learned that day that it was, like a big school, and that it was nothing to be afraid of. And then old Sam, he went to varsity, and you and Robbie went down there as well. And they were all things that probably I planted the seed, with that visit, because you can't really explain to a kid. Yeah. I think you should go to university, and they say, "Did you go, Dad?" And say, "Oh no, you should." Yeah. So all of those things. It was a wonderful. It was a wonderful journey being your dad and Robbie and Sam's. I mean, it was wonderful, and I guess one of the things I always had in mind too, that while knowledge is great, that imagination is better. So anything that I could get you guys latched on to working your imagination was what I did. And
yeah,
how it's all panning out, the journey is still going on. So the end result is yet to show.
Yeah, I like that. Knowledge is great, but imagination's better. We did a lot of sport growing up, and one thing people are starting to hit me up about is, when you have kids, you're gonna get them out goal kicking using the Rugby Bricks tees. It's a bit of tongue in cheek, but how did you? You didn't. I can't remember you ever forcing us to do reps and work on basketball skill and goal kicking when I got into that. But how did you make it known that if we did do a lot of it, we might get good at it? Because I think that's a hard thing as a parent to nail when it comes to sport.
I was always absolutely adamant that you would be what you would be, and my influence was going to be minor. If you had the all-round knowledge and a little bit of over self-confidence, you'd have a go. And I just loved that you had a go. As you know, you especially, well, Robbie probably played more sports than you. But it didn't matter what you had to go at. You were committed. You weren't going to say that you were going to play basketball and then 3 weeks into the season going to say, "Oh no, I would rather play soccer." It's like, that's not happening, guys. If you say you're playing basketball this season. You make a commitment to the team, and that's what you do. And I think I just helped with, everything. I remember once you got really keen. You were quite young, probably in fourth form, a shot put. And I happened to know a guy that had been to the Commonwealth Games in the New Zealand team. And so next thing, he was out of the boys' eye, and he was teaching you how to throw the shot put. And I wouldn't be surprised if you still hold the record at Waitaki Boys' Eye for that shot put.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I know you hold one. I'm sure you hold one record still. So it was just, and what always amazed me with you boys, and you're all really good sportsmen, and that always comes from the mother. I probably need to put that on record. I think Alison Rowe, they asked her one night about her own daughter, and she said the university where Peter Snell worked in the States had highlighted that the gene that makes us an athlete always comes from the mother. Wow. So with that in mind, I realized that your sporting ability had very little to do with me. And you just had to have a go, and whatever you were going to have a go at, I would help. So whether or not it was kicking the ball back to you when you were goal kicking, or rides in the car to whatever sport and whatever part of the South Island you were playing sport, and that went on for a number of years. It always amazed me, the guys that arrived in order to help. And I guess it's that the opportunity comes to the prepared mind, or as you indicated earlier, the student has to be ready to learn. And I think of guys like Murray Munro and Roy Dawn and Brian de Geest and Lindsay Smith and those guys that were really, really over talented in their field. They just like appeared out of nowhere to coach your teams or to help out. And that always amazed me, how you guys, while you played a lot of sport, there was always a man or woman about that knew a bit about the game and was able to help you, because, as you know, I was quite limited in that field.
Yeah. No,
So,
I think you're right, but you were always there, and you're always supportive with car rides, and we always had it facilitated, which was magic. The next thing I want to ask you about is messages of encouragement to people. I often have mates and teammates, and even some of the people that I talk to on the podcast or coaching now that message and say, "Hey, I got a message from your dad." Leo Breen messaged me. I'm a big fan of it as well, because Kanye had a line, "People don't get their roses while they can still smell them," meaning you die before you get your flowers.
Yeah.
But I really like what you do with those messages. Why do you do that?
I guess I do it because I love it when people do it to me, and I've had it done to me on a number of occasions, and like it gobsmacks me when people do it to me. And it's one of those things that it takes a very, very small amount of time, but the impact it has is magic. And I guess I've met and I've got to know enough people that have done really, really well in life. And we imagine that they're not above us, but we imagine that they've got everything that they need. And I've learned that that's not always the case, and even they need a little bit of encouragement. And you know, my best friend probably, like in particular, has done amazingly well in life, financially, but he's the very same Ian that he was when I met him, like in my 20s. And we have the same relationship, and we ask each other the same questions, and the same things that are important to us now are what was important then. And I guess a word of, I feel like, encouragement is a very small gift, but it has a massive impact. And it's the old story. It's like you boys when you were younger. You needed love when you least bloody deserved it, and I guess it's just one of those things about life. Little bit of encouragement, a little bit of well done. It doesn't do any harm, and it goes a long way. I think some of the responses I've had from those people that you mentioned are really like heartwarming. So I don't imagine that I do it in order to warm my own heart, but it certainly has that result when I get a response. And other times, there's a widely held view that whatever we do for ourselves, and I understand it, but I don't really like to think that I do it for myself. I do it because they've impressed me, or they've inspired me, or whatever the word is.
I think you mentioned there about getting love when we didn't deserve it. I think one story I would like to have on the record is the time we pushed the car down the hill without anyone in it. And I think you explain it really well. So before we jump into the RB values, I would like to hear the story from your perspective when it comes to that event in the Breen household.
We had a smaller car at the time, and
Honda.
when I was parked in the garage, it was an arrangement whereby the only way into the garage was you had to go out like onto the footpath and then into the garage. And you boys, of course, being quite small, weren't allowed to go like onto the footpath. And Raylene and I were in the lounge one day, and old Sam came screaming past the window and into the lounge, and he wasn't able to speak. And it was reasonably obvious by the speed that he came in and the fact that he wasn't able to speak that there was a problem. So I rushed out as Robbie was running past the door and up to the back section. And I, of course, raced out the gate, like onto the footpath, had a look back in the garage and the car wasn't there. Looked down the hill, and here was the car about 5 houses down the hill, reversed into the wall of that particular property, and you were doing your very best to aim to push the car back up the hill and into the garage before Dad came out and saw it. And what had happened was that one of you had got in the driver's seat, and the other two pushed, and when they weren't able to get the car moving, the one in the driver's seat got out. Obviously, the car would normally be left in gear with the park brake on, but neither of those appear to have happened, and you all leaned into the car to give it a push, to aim to get it going, and of course the car went out the garage onto the hill. It was quite a steep hill, and then the steering would have locked, and so the car did a big arc and smashed into the wall. Luckily, it didn't hit any other vehicles on the street at the time, and what always amazed me, once we all calmed down, what always amazed me was that you three boys reacted at the time the way that you would have ever since. The oldest boy being Sam, who was a year and a couple of months older than you and Robbie, he raced in to let us know there was a problem and that we needed to be aware of it. It was above him and he couldn't handle it. He was probably 4. And then you two being 3, Robbie raced up the back section.
Wow.
Well, Robbie raced up the back section and made out he was playing, didn't know anything about the incident. And you were down at the car aiming to put the car back in the garage. As you have always done, you would aim like to put things right. And absolutely amazing that little fellas of that age, well, the most important thing was amazing was that none of you got hurt or killed. And next amazing is how you reacted and how, like, our personalities are developed, like, even at that age, that we act as we act. And yeah, it was like absolutely fascinating. We got a lot of mileage out of that story. We told a lot of people about it. It's absolutely fascinating. Right, our boys, yeah, they had their first car accident when they were 3. So
the amazing, and obviously with your explanations now, I mean, I always knew how much effort you put into being a dad, but it's awesome to hear you sort of articulate it and say what your plan was from day one. One thing I do want to hit you up about is, as kids growing up, it's extremely funny when your dad has a stutter, and it's probably not that enjoyable for the person with a stutter. And I'm not saying it is funny, but it's just how it was as a kid, as we used to make fun of you for having it. We've been going for 33 minutes, I reckon, so far, and you haven't had a stutter yet. Talk us through that and just overcoming that, obviously, with your job at the council and speaking and meetings and what that was like.
I remember at school it was like horrific, because it's one of those things that the worse you imagine it is, then the worse it is. And as I grow and learned, read a bit about it, read a lot about it probably, it is, I work around it. I use unusual words at times in order to avoid the word that I know will cause me an issue. I just did it then. So it's something that never goes away. It's always there. It's worse when I'm tired, and it's worse when I'm nervous.
Mm.
And one of the things that you do very well is aim to put people at ease. So I guess that's what's happening here. So thank you for that.
Why does it happen when you were learning about it? I'm just interested to know, and I'm sure the people listening, why do you stutter?
I understand it mainly happens in boys, and it's like a nervous reaction.
Right.
And
yeah,
it's all to do with the air movement in your throat, and
wow.
words that begin with S and T and B are the worst, probably. Yes.
I reckon it's the best way to solve anything you're going through is find out, ask someone about it, research it, and sort of understand why it happens, and then you can come up with the plan. Anxiety, depression, the works. If you understand it, you can get coping mechanisms as you did.
I absolutely agree, but when you're 8 or 9 years old, those thoughts don't come to you.
Bloody hell. You're doing well. The one thing before you get into the values is I was playing rugby for Otago. I was desperate to make Super Rugby with the Highlanders. My first year didn't make it. Second year didn't make it. Third year didn't make it. Fourth year didn't make it. But what it did was it gave me an opportunity to have a project for 5 months, 6 months, and we chose to do house renovation. So we bought our first house, did a lot of work, got it revalued, used that equity to buy the next one. And so we did that for 3 consecutive years. And you were a ginormous help. And I think I will always be thankful for the hours that you put into that. But I do remember one time I got dropped from the starting team to the bench. I had a roof that I needed to paint. I was under pressure. My world was caving in, as we all do when rugby's the be-all, end-all. But you had already been down for a couple of nights, slept on the wooden floor, got the job done, and I just remember it being a big relief. How, when you look at that, like, you must be incredibly proud of the hours you put in and the help you gave in that situation as well, for myself, Robbie, and Sam now with houses.
I just love it. There's nothing that would give a dad more joy than watching his kids thrive. And I guess because I knew a little bit about the property business and renovating properties, I knew that if we could establish a base for you and Jay, that it would be a base you would have the rest of your lives. And if I wasn't going to leave you a fortune, then one way that I was able to make the biggest difference in your life was to give you something that would be ongoing. And I guess it reminds me of that, the old saying that say, we've done too much not to do more, and we've come too far not to go further. And in lots of ways, I believe I've lived that way with you and Robbie and Sam. There's nothing I'd rather do than help you guys achieve what you want to achieve. And that goes right back to when you were playing sport. I mean, it didn't worry me if you were good at throwing with a shot put, but you wanted to be good at it, so it was my job to do what I could to help. And the houses were the same. I just knew that it would be it'd be like a legacy that you and Jay would have, and exactly the same with Liv and Sam and Robbie. Leave them something lasting that they'll be able to remember, and that will improve their lives for the rest of their lives. So yeah, while it was are tough. I always remember you saying that you'd had mates that would do anything, if you like, to do, or like, I'm sorry, to have what you've got in Eden. And I just looked at you and smiled and said, no, they wouldn't be, because they would love to have what you've got, but they wouldn't love the nights, the early mornings, fencing in a moon boot, all of those, all the heartache. Poor old Jay being that tired that she could hardly talk. There was a huge amount of effort and passion from all of us went into that project. And the way the property market's been in Dunedin in the last 5 years, I mean, I smile, but I probably always knew that it would work well. I just had no expectation it would work that well so fast. So as with everything, it was just a pleasure. My job was to be the best dad I could be, and if that was helping on the house site, then that's what I did.
I reckon the biggest thing that I learned from that whole thing, and it come from learning myself, but also from you as well, was just the value of an hour, what you could do in an hour to help the next day, to get the job done.
Yes.
You know, I think that was definitely led by you. It's like, Pete, if we just get stuck in here, we can get this done today. We can get this room painted or fence concreted or
let's get the posts in today so we can put the rails on tomorrow and we'll have the fence painted tomorrow night. But if we don't put the posts in today, then that's not going to happen tomorrow. It's there were some big days, and I'm pleased the way things worked out for you.
Me too. The Dunedin house market, long may it continue going up. I want to get into the RB values, and you're going to take over this part of it. So again, just to reiterate from the start, we wanted to create, Rugby Bricks has got the outwork, outlearn, but we wanted something a little bit deeper. So Dad, Leo, is going to read through them all. So I can read through all 5 of them, Dad, and then we can touch on each one and you can ask whatever you want.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Do you want to read them out?
Lead with empathy. Excuse me.
So lead with empathy. The reason why this one was big is I think one thing rugby teaches you, whether you're coaching or playing, is that people come from all different walks of life and cultures and families and countries. And I think we can be so quick to judge of why someone turns up looking the way they are or has the gear they have maybe isn't on for that start of training. And this is purely in the rugby sense, but I think all 5 of them translate over to life. If you can lead with empathy for a start and just have a little more understanding and give, and you can often get them working in the team a lot better. So that's where that lead with empathy comes from.
Do you, I think it's absolutely wonderful. Simon Sinek, do you watch Simon Sinek?
Yep, sure do.
Videos. US Air Force. I think the world is leaning that way. We talked there before about knowledge and imagination. Our skills are only any good when you want to face the expected. Yep. So all the training that you do and all the practice that happens is only arming you to deal with what is expected. So if an unexpected event happens, like on the field, on the pitch, on the court, you have no way of dealing with it. Whereas those that lead towards empathy, that lean towards empathy, they don't really mind what happens, they know like how to deal with it. And if they deal with it in a caring way, everybody around them will look to them, and it all turns out all right. I believe that empathy is going to impact like on the corporate world like we can't imagine, because the corporate world is not able to carry on the way it has been. And I think it's wonderful the way that you explained it as good. Lead with empathy. That's one thing about values, is they need to be verbs or like action words.
Yes.
And we probably learned that from the same guy, but it makes absolute total sense to me. Well done.
Happy days. Number 2.
Be you, let be.
So pretty simple. I'm big on be you, and sort of that stay in your lane, do what you're good at. If you can build stuff, be a builder. If you really like your sciences, follow that path. If you like business, go down that path. But I think it's really important to be you and get after your stuff, but then also just let other people be. And I think when I can have a conversation with someone who's totally outside of my realm, but if they love it, if they absolutely love talking about it, they can explain it, they know the detail, they get excited in their voice when you talk to them. It's really exciting. But that's also me letting them be them and helping and sharing with them. So I think that's going back to the rugby team environment. It's really important to be you, but also let those other people in the team that are different personalities and ways of thinkings and environments, to let them be as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one's finished. I like the concept. You like the concept. You be you and let be. I mean, I absolutely agree with the second half. And yeah, you got to be like authentic. You got to be genuine. You got to be passionate. You got to be all those sorts of things. But it was Billy Connolly once said, "The people are famous for what they haven't got, not for what they have." Almost all of them have given up lots of things that very, very small number would give up. Almost all of them have worked harder than most of us could ever imagine possible. And almost all of them end up with nothing that we take for granted. They can't have a day at the park. Mm. You are not ever going to meet anybody really famous wandering around the park that's closest your apartment in Melbourne. It's not going to happen. They're going to have a team, a bit of security people with them, and them, like having a day out is not what you would call a day out. It's and if you just expand on what he said, that they're famous for what they haven't got, not for what they have, and we never know where other people are in life. We imagine they're happy. It's it's the old story about the guy driving down the motorway in the Porsche. We all imagine that he's lucky, but he could well be looking for the next large concrete structure to wrap it around. Yeah. We have no idea what's going on in people's lives, and that leading with empathy and you be you, let be. Yeah, great start, Pete. Yeah. Learn more and show more.
Share more. Learn more, share more. I may have sent that through wrong.
No, it is share more. Actually, you've written down you learn more, share more. My apologies.
That's all right.
My apologies, podcaster.
So learn more, share more. I suppose, I mean, that's been Rugby Bricks from day one. If I think about what we're doing, like free content, all the good stuff, there hasn't been one idea that I've kept secret or haven't put out there. And I think it's a really good way to grow and develop as a coach, is if you're constantly giving away everything you've got. You learn more and hear different ways of doing things, and sharing more sort of just comes into it. So I think your community grows, your team grows, your knowledge grows by sharing. The other good thing is when you share, generally it's a good idea to be organized before you share. So organize your thoughts on a page of paper. A good example with that learn more, share more is there's a girl named Med. So Georgia Cormack, the girl that's in most of my videos in Melbourne, her girlfriend and partner Meds she plays rugby as well, working on her kicking. When she was kicking, it was like she was sitting on a stool. So she was, slightly sitting. And sitting on the kick, and her hips weren't engaged. And it was only then that I sort of had a light bulb moment of that's how you could explain it. You're sitting on a stool trying to kick. You're not using your hips, not powerful. Fast forward in Auckland with the session with Bowden Barrett, and I noticed that one of the reasons why his kicking wasn't going so well, which we probably all have seen the last few years, is he was sitting on his kick. And the only way that I would have been able to identify that and seen it and been able to share that information was by having that session with Meds, that I was there trying to help her. So that's, again, learn more, share more. Your knowledge grows, everyone gets better, and it's really positive. So that's me.
Yeah, that's a good story. It's, I think, good time for a bit of shout out to Georgia Cormack and Meds Robinson. Robinson?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, they're obviously a lot of fun, those two. One of these days I'll get to Melbourne when the borders open and I don't have to quarantine. I'll come and meet all you people. That share more, it works incredibly well in the corporate world as well as what it does in your world. It's like the more that you delegate, you imagine that you're giving authority away. But it actually works in reverse. The more you delegate, the more you make other people responsible for things, and therefore the more authority that you have because you were the one that was in charge of the outcome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I couldn't agree more about the more you share, the more you teach, the more all those sorts of things, the better it is for us all. We learn by sharing. I think that's what you said about organising your thoughts. I mean, like, even just organising your thoughts is like a learning process for the sharer.
Correct.
And yeah, it's amazing what the guys that end up names that we're able to recognise in the coaching world. It's amazing what they do to learn. Like we Tony Brown away with
Silver Ferns.
netball, yes, and then Scott Robertson away with the America's Cup team.
Yeah.
It just, and I don't know so much like about Tony Brown, but I know that Scott Robertson has been to the States. He's worked with Rugby League. He's looked everywhere that he can look for inspiration and knowledge. And I just think it's all to do with sharing. Like, I'm sure that he is sharing when he goes to those places.
Yeah.
And like, he'll get back more than he gives. That's one of the rules of life, is that we have to give in order to get. And yeah, I learn more, share more. Wonderful.
Thank you. Number 4.
Create your atmosphere.
So I think a lot of us fall into the comfort of familiar friends, familiar environment, and familiar coaching, and probably just that big fish in a small pond type thing. And I think that's one side of it, but also creating your atmosphere just around how you go about your day, who's in your sort of network. I'm a big believer that if you hang around 5 dumb people, you'll be the 6th, and if you hang around 5 smart people, you'll be the 6th. And I think it's just contagious. So your atmosphere for me is a really good word because it sort of explains the feel, the vibe. It's like when you walk into a restaurant and you know straight away, yep, this is a great vibe. You can sort of create that in your house, your bedroom, your environment. So creating your atmosphere. And I think Georgia Cormick, we mentioned her before, a perfect example. She's created an atmosphere where she's got her dog at home. She's built a home gym. She's got it set up, goals on the wall, always reminders around the house. That's creating an atmosphere. It doesn't have to be expensive or flash, but it's creating your atmosphere that's going to lead to you getting the goals that you want to get after.
Right. That's probably the one that I was looking forward to asking you about because I like it, but it's not something that I've ever read before, I don't believe. And that's always nice when you learn something new. We are what we believe. And if we believe that we've got, that we've got the day that we want, then that's what we believe in. That's where we become stuck. Recreate your own atmosphere is awesome. I think
probably the one that I did want to touch on is that I think it's a good thing to replace the word culture with atmosphere. I think it brings a lot more feel, and you can. It's one thing that I've definitely changed up with how I would approach building a culture. Is probably the old word, but I think atmosphere.
Yeah.
Really drives the nail home.
Yep. Have organised lanes of frustration, and I must admit the very first time I ever heard this was when you discussed it on the podcast with, is it pronounced like a lev kelter?
Nailed it. I thought it was a leave for a while, but it's a lev, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's one that's really helped me. So I picked that up about a year ago. I heard this explained, and I think it's a really good one because I was someone who would get frustrated pretty easily just because I just got frustrated. And the way that it got explained is if you organise your lanes of frustration. So I'll use me as an example. So within my coaching and sessions that I have within Rugby Bricks and how the business works and what we're trying to achieve there and probably home, my organised lane. So it just means that you can get annoyed, you can ask for better effort, better standards, drive whatever you're after in those lanes. And it just means that you're not always complaining because you're waiting in line at the restaurant or they got the order wrong or your coffee's too cold, you get a flat tire. If you decide that everything outside of those lanes, it's okay. There's no rush, there's no big issue. I'm okay. Just doing your best not to get frustrated in those areas. It has worked wonders for me because when stuff does happen, as big or small as what they are, outside of those lanes, you can handle them. But then more importantly, you can actually hold your standards extremely high in your lanes of frustration and demand things. When we go over to the field, and it might just be a session with a couple of the girls, like, we're there to do a job. We're not just here having fun kicking a ball around. Like, this is serious. We're doing this properly. And so that's why I think it's good to have organised what are your lanes of frustration, which will lead to that high performance that you're after.
You're right. That's an excellent example.
Thank you. I had it
because we do. I don't believe I'm a moaner, but it really intrigues me. I always remember once having a meal, and the plate of soup came out, and the man next to me, he was a board member of the establishment, and he complained that the soup wasn't hot enough. And the waitress, took it away. I said, I bet it's hot enough when it came back, like when it comes back, John. And whether or not the lady just put the bowl on the bloody hot plate on the oven, I've no idea. But when the soup came back, you could feel the heat radiating off the bowl. And I was sitting next to him. And I often imagine that what goes on in people's heads that they need to complain about trivial things, would it really have mattered? Mm. And because I like to think I'm a non-complainer, I watch people on a daily basis moan about stuff that has no consequence, and all it does is annoy people that they moan, and which makes it worse because they get negativity then around everything, and it just becomes worse and worse. So it's a whole new concept. Like I said, the very first time I'd ever heard of it was when you discussed it last week with Alev. I think it's awesome. I actually told Raylene about it last night. I aim to explain it to her. So this is a growing trend that you've developed here, people. It's all go.
No. Fantastic. Well, that's us. We've just ticked over the hour mark. I think you did extremely well for your first ever podcast. Was there anything else you had down that you wanted to discuss, or final thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a value. I don't know it's anything else, but I know that one message that I believe is worth noting. We're going to do what you say you will do. Mm. I believe that's, if you like, it's almost, a basis of life. But apart from that, I didn't have much else that I had wondered about discussing with you. No doubt I stay in your lane is something that I've heard you mention a bit, and I think that's important too. And most of your guests are very, very good at that on the podcast. So I hope that this hasn't been more waffly than what you wanted. Because I'm well aware that a discussion like this is able to get waffly. No. Spend time thinking about the downside that was a thing that I learned recently. You will find the upside is going to take care of itself. You just have to worry about the downside. And if you manage the downside and the opportunity or with the proposed action, the upside will happen without you thinking of it.
Yeah.
If we had this chat 2 years ago, it would have been very different. And hopefully, if we do another one in 2 years' time, it will be different again. And I think that a really good mindset to have is to be open-minded, which helps us learn and grow. And I love how you do that. I love how you educate yourself. You're a master at it, Peter. You are, and I've often told you that. Your podcasts fascinate me. I believe I've listened to every minute of every one.
That was what I was gonna ask you about. Have you had any highlights or people that you really enjoyed with the podcast?
Yeah, I like, you've never done a podcast that I think, well, that sucked. But the ones, I guess, what amazes me, and I'm not sure why, but the one, if you ask me about them now, I would mention Stephen Larkham, just because he's, like, he and you get on great, and the podcast, if you like, reflected that. But the ones that would spring to mind are the woman, and they, I don't know, you had some interesting discussion with men, but the ones, Abby, is it Gastatus, or it's a word like that, captain of the USA team.
Yeah, Abby Gastatus.
Yeah. Charlotte Caslick,
Yeah.
Chloe Dalton, Em Chancellor, Rachel Burford, and with Devon Markle, your wife Jay, and Lev Kelter. They're like, incredible women. They all specialise in their field, and they add a new perspective.
Yeah.
And their way of communicating really fascinates me. I don't know whether it's something that we're not good at, like in New Zealand, or they just are really well-educated and hugely confident women that have got a wonderful way of communicating. But I think my life is better because of the podcast that you do, Peter.
Thank you.
And your guests have all made a big contribution. Thank you. It's a huge gift, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity that I've had today, and I hope that I've added some value to all the other podcast people that you've had on, because I say go well, and Rugby Bricks and Peter, because I think you do an amazing job with this.
No, I appreciate it. And the thing that I'm a massive believer in monkey see, monkey do. I think when you see someone very close or just in front of you achieve something, it's just makes it so much more achievable for yourself. Hence why I love having these females on the podcast that do have killer instinct, that are world class, that are taking on the challenge, because I think the women's game is growing, and these girls are sort of the monkey see, monkey do effect, and that's why they're so class. But thanks very much for coming on. Thanks again for looking after the dog Indy. I know that you're a big fan of her, so keep doing what you're doing there. It's really helpful. So
slam.